Hello everyone, my name is Kim. I'm a pretty emotional girl. I've always been that way and I'm likely to stay that way. There are people who blush when they're angry, hiccup when they're scared or something, and I cry every time someone kisses me. It doesn't look very aesthetically pleasing. I don't even know what kind of sins I deserve such a super ability for, but I'm terribly uncomfortable with it. Now I'll tell you how I discovered it and what I sometimes have to worry about, what I go through. In the meantime, leave your opinion in the comments and I'll be happy to read them. I have a father, a sister, and a brother in my family. Our mother has been working in another country for many years. She went there to earn money, but she has not yet come back. We certainly do not despair. We wait and believe, especially the youngest one. He was very much attached to her. I remember how my father wouldn't let my mother leave at first. He kept saying that if anyone was going to work, it would be him. But she wouldn't listen to him. And then my father had some difficulties with the documents, so he had to stay with us anyway. He, like many dads, had no idea how to deal with us. But thanks to the services of nannies and the eldest daughter, that is me, we managed to survive. So that's why I'm telling you about all of this. On the day my mother left, I was about 12 years old. We were very small, and I was already thinking I didn't want her to leave. But I knew that if my parents had made up their minds, I wouldn't be able to talk her out of it. So I slowly forced myself to come to terms with the idea, and finally, when the day of her departure came, my mother kissed me for the last time. It was the coldest kiss from her. I swear, I felt like she wanted to get out of there fast, like she wanted to start a new life, and I felt like this was our last meeting. Naturally, I didn't tell anyone about it, and I still keep it a secret. But something strange happened to me after that moment. I remember when we got home, I suddenly felt very bad, so bad that I almost fainted. My father called an ambulance and turned pale. I was pumped out, told that it was all about nerves and stress, advised to rest more and enjoy life. Yeah, you'll be happy here because the most difficult part is still ahead. From that moment on, our lives were different. We learned what it means to belong to yourself, take care of each other independently, solve problems, meet new nannies, clean, cook, and so on. It was especially hard for me because I'm a girl and because I'm the eldest. From that day on, no one ever kissed me again. I didn't even have the habit of kissing my girlfriends because I didn't want to. At home, kisses were reduced to 0, and so we lived. A few years had passed, we had matured, changed, and hardened. Everything fell into place, exactly as it should have been. I was doing well at school, and then it seemed to get even better. I got a boyfriend. He went to a different school, was older than me, and I really liked him. You won't believe it. Our relationship was right in my head. Everything was fine until he kissed me. At that moment, it was as if I felt a chill again and a wave of tears rose to my throat. Hot tears gushed from my eyes. I was crying like I was at a funeral. Sam was surprised. The first time, he asked me 100 questions about what, how, and why, but I couldn't figure it out myself. Then we started checking, and the theory was confirmed. I have something like an allergy to kissing. I roar like I'm on my last day of life. I first cried after kissing and then laughed at myself. It looked awful, but I couldn't help it. I even went to a psychologist, and she told me that it was all about my distant childhood trauma. Everything is connected with a kiss from my mother. Maybe it won't go away until I forgive her. But the thing is, I couldn't forgive her. In the end, Sam couldn't stand it, and he left. Of course, it was terribly shitty, but what could I do? Because I could not stop him. He is also just a person. Over time, everything became normal, but I also changed. Became such a callous bitch. I think the thing is that I have accumulated a lot of resentment. Over the years, I stopped letting anyone near me at all, and I didn't even have any friends. One time, a girl from the parallel began to crowd in on me. Her name was Helen, and she had a boyfriend named Dylan. He was a real hunk. I didn't mean to hurt her, honestly, but my inner angry bitch was driving me at that moment. Helen knew about my tantrum after the kiss and thought it was cute. I remember. She had a party and I had a little too much to drink. I got sick and went to lie down in Helen's room. Then her boyfriend came in. He wanted to take something and I started pestering him. Anyway, I kissed him and started crying. At that moment, Helena came in. She knew what was going on right away because Dylan had a face like that and I was sitting on her bed sobbing. They broke up and it was my fault, and she also stopped communicating with me. I know I don't deserve a friend like that, but it happened the way it happened. Since it's been a couple of years, in the end, I was left almost alone. I had no friends, no soulmate. The guys were scared. I couldn't hold them. A couple of years later, I changed psychologists, and he began to actively help me. He was just writing a scientific dissertation on disorders similar to mine. Dr. Rob treated me with all sorts of methods, and it was free except for consultations. After 5 years, his work bore fruit. And the moment when he decided to test everything in practice, it became the most memorable. He kissed me, and for the first time, I reciprocated calmly, without tears or tantrums. Everything was fine. After that, we started dating. Yes, I am still together with him. I don't know anyone who helped me, supported me, or believed in me the same way Rob did. I couldn't ask for anyone better. As for my family, Rob became almost our family psychologist. He also helped my father not to bury himself in himself. We found a common language, and soon, my father built a decent life for himself. We jokingly called Rob our mom, but if we're serious, we're all very grateful to him. Do you think you guys would be able to date a girl with this feature? How would you behave if your partner reacted to a kiss like that? Please write your opinion in the comments and tell your stories. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share my story with your friends.
Hello everyone, my name is Nikki, but I was originally meant to be called Todd, but it just so happened that I couldn't pronounce my name properly. The fact is, I was born with a smile, and I'm not talking about the one that usually comes from emotions. I have something else. This thing is connected to the nerve endings that I pinched during my mother's pregnancy. At first, my face seemed really cute for the doctors and my mother. They all kept saying what a happy and cute baby was born. But in reality, everything was different, and, in fact, because of this, there were not very pleasant situations. I'll tell you about it now. Problem number 1. Like I said, I had to change my name because I couldn't pronounce it. Otherwise, I was just a normal child. Eyes, mouth, ears. When I grew up a little bit, I began to show emotions like a real smile, and it was no different from the one that I already had 24/7. If you haven't figured it out yet, imagine a smiling doll that always has a smiling mouth, regardless of the mood and actions. So this is me. My parents learned to read my emotions in my eyes. When I smiled, my eyes shone, and when I didn't, they were normal. But the worst part is that when I cried, I was like a sad clown. Have you watched the movie Joker? I'm like him, but not crazy. When I started going to school, it was like a test, because the guys there looked at me like I was an idiot. They called me the Joker, by the way. There were some really weird situations when I got picked on by unpleasant guys at school. And here they stand, surrounded by a crowd, calling me names, shouting, throwing insults, and I stand and involuntarily smile. I was always predicted a career as a sad clown, called a loser. Because of my inner complexes, I could not even adequately respond to them. My relatives, neighbors, and friends got used to me, but I couldn't find a place at school until a girl named Rena transferred to us. She was the first to approach me, met me, and immediately began to communicate. I thought that she was looking for an excuse to mock, dig, laugh, and was distrustful. But time passed, and she was still warm to me. Then I timidly went to meet him, and I was not mistaken. Rena was a bright person. She was born in a poor family with many children, and despite this, she treated everything with incredible kindness. Rena was able to withstand any blow from society. I thought that I was the only one who could be bullied, but it turns out that Rena received ridicule from the girls only because she was poor. I thought it was unfair, so I told her, and she said she thought the same of me. There are things and circumstances beyond our control. In this case, we just need to change our attitude to them and then they no longer seem terrible, she said. This girl also often told me that, in fact, I should not be offended by those who offend me, because those people are limited in many ways, including in development. This thought gave me peace and strength. We became friends together and our relationship was also criticized. We were called lovers, but we tried to ignore them. Once, when our teacher came to school again, she decided to hold a lesson in the open air. There were also our wonderful classmates, who did not miss dozens of attempts to call us names. The teacher made a few comments, and then offered to have a breakfast and a picnic. We all happily agreed. Each of us laid out food. Who had what? At first I was embarrassed to eat in front of everyone. I usually didn't, because sometimes the food would fly out of my mouth. I couldn't cover it completely, but that day I knew that sooner or later I would have to do it, especially since my friend was there, and this gave me confidence. I pulled the food container out of my bag as my mother made my favorite club sandwich with ham, sliced fruit, and added juice. Hey, poor people, you don't even have food with you. This is the same freak who always humiliates us with his boys. I looked at Rena, who sat with her head down and said nothing. I gave her my half. She thanked me. Thomas shouted again, pointing at us with his finger. One homeless woman, the other a joker. That's a couple. I took the half-finished juice and poured it on him, and he jumped back in surprise. But he was already all wet. Thomas didn't think twice before he bumped into me. All the children jumped up from their seats. The teacher began to separate us, but nothing helped. We clung to each other like leeches, and no one could stop us. As a result, the teacher shouted that she was calling the principal, and we immediately let each other go. I apologized to the teacher for my behavior and promised to be more restrained. Thomas didn't say a word, just looked at me sideways and gestured that I was finished. Then he suddenly bent down, wanted to drink some water, and suddenly began to choke. We all didn't understand what was going on. We thought he was just messing with us again. The teacher sternly told him to stop acting like this, but he continued. I noticed that his face was blue and ran up, wrapped my arms around the back, and began to press on his stomach. I did a few such manipulations, and grapes popped out of Thomas's mouth. It turns out that the berry fell into his glass when we were fighting and he did not notice it, quickly drank the water and choked. There was silence. Thomas breathed as if for the first time. It was only after a couple of minutes that he looked at me, at the other people, then silently grabbed his bag and left. Everyone stood in slight shock. Then the teacher told us to pack up and led us back to the classroom. When we got back, Thomas was sitting there alone. It wasn't until the next break that he came up to me and thanked me. It was awkward for him to overstep his pride, but he did it. To be honest, I was pleased. After this incident, I was respected not only by Tom, but also by the rest of my classmates. Rena and I were invited to parties, invited to have lunch at a common table, and joined our teamwork on subjects. People started seeing a different side of us and I was happy, just like Rena. Everything turned out as she said. Once you change your attitude to something, everything becomes different. What is happening now? No, my smile did not go away, but I began to treat it differently, from a different angle, to pass it off as a virtue, not a disadvantage, and people now reach for me themselves. My inner qualities, which my friend instilled in me, have been preserved. Kindness and faith in the best are two things that nothing can ever erase. In general, now, my smile is my business card, and I will advise you the same. Once you love yourself, the world around you also changes.